We got a big Rams injury update. We have keys to victory against the Dallas Cowboys. How can this Rams team go into Dallas and get a W? We're talking a little bit about the trade deadline, storylines, matchups, and more. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to a Football Friday edition of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor. Join the party. Subscribe to the Locked On Rams YouTube channel. Getting close to 10,000 subs thanks to you. So hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. Hit that like button. Let us know what is your prediction for this week's matchup against the Cowboys. What do you think is the biggest key? My name is Doug McCann. My friends call me D-Mac. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade for SI, 24/7 Sports, Dodgers Nation, now the Rams for Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre, half, and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's in his 8th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the people's champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. On today's show, we're talking a little bit about that trade deadline. What will the Rams do? Will they stand pat? Is there any players that they would make a move for? We're previewing this matchup. What are the keys to victory? Matchups that will decide the game. We got storylines. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for your first deposit match up to $1. Now, Travis, got a lot to get into, but first we have to say congratulations to Sean McVay.
Sure.
Sean McVay, of course, has a son. And I don't know if you saw this, the Rams, they tweet out LA Rams transactions delivered Jordan John McKay. So my first question is, can he kick? And my second question is his first word's going to be pass to Cooper Kupp? But yeah, congrats to Sean McVay.
Or timeout, one or the other. You know, there's a lot of options right there. But yeah, no, the ability to kick is a very good question. I think that's one of the things that we're certainly going to be looking for heading into Dallas is whether or not they got the kicking situation squared away or not, whether or not Lucas Haversick is the answer to the question. A lot of things going into this game. I really do think that these next 2 weeks are the entire Rams season. If you can get through it with a couple of wins, you're in really good shape. If you can get through it with one win, I guess you still got a heartbeat, but if Dallas and Green Bay go the way that none of us hope that it does, then we're talking draft in the middle of October.
Yeah, those are the stakes. You got 2 to get 1, right? Let's make sure that maybe this week it could be the one. You win against the Cowboys, carry momentum into Green Bay, you win both going to the bye. That'd be an ideal situation. But yeah, a lot is riding on these next 2 games. And we're going to start with a little injury news. Nothing too heavy to report, but really the thing that stands out, and it's a little concerning, is that right tackle Rob Havenstein was added to the injury report on Thursday after suffering an apparent calf injury. He hadn't been listed previously, so that's something that we're going to follow closely heading up to game day. Of course, the obvious choice, you have Joe Noteboom. Sean McVay's called him the 6th man there, right tackle. So that's definitely a little concerning, especially you got Micah Parsons in this defensive line of the Cowboys.
Yeah, you nailed it, right? Rob Havenstein is probably your most reliable offensive lineman of the group of 5. He's the guy that's been there the longest. He's the guy that you probably need to worry about the least. So all of a sudden when he's nicked up a little bit and maybe he's not going to be at his best, or maybe he needs some time, or maybe this injury starts to deteriorate a little bit and he needs to miss more than maybe a little time. Joe Noteboom's not as good as Rob Havenstein. We saw it, against the Eagles a couple of weeks ago where he missed 1 snap and they brought in McClendon, and Matthew Stafford took the hardest hit he's taken all season long. So this is something that matters. It is still the question that I think starts each and every Rams game is, can you give Matthew Stafford the time he needs? Because when he has time, he's pretty darn good. When he doesn't, it's not very good. So if Rob Havenstein is something less than fully effective, it could be a really long day because Micah Parsons will make you pay for it.
Yeah, and that's 100% one of the biggest keys of this game is trying to neutralize, trying to slow down Micah Parsons. We're going to talk about that matchup in a second here, but you have to start with Matthew Stafford. The Rams' success or failure in this one, I think, is going to boil down to, one, can he perform well? Can he get on the same page with Cooper Kupp? Can you take advantage of the secondary of the Cowboys that's banged up? You're missing Diggs. You're missing some guys over there. Can you exploit those matchups? Can you stay upright? Also, can you avoid those back-breaking, inopportune interceptions, those fumbles, anything from a turnover standpoint? Can you have a clean game? Because I think what this game could come down to, which quarterback makes the least amount of mistakes. And if you look at Stafford this year, Travis, 59.8% completion percentage. That's his lowest mark since 2013. Has had some bad drops. There's no doubt about that. But we heard that he's banged up a little bit. It's towards the middle of the season. We're getting close to the bye. If he can have a real bounce back performance and look sharp in this one, that's going to change this game.
So we go into the season thinking that there's the big three, right? Thinking that as long as Stafford, Kupp, and Donald are all good and ready to go, that the Rams got a chance to at least be competitive. And I think that was right. I think that was probably the right way to look at this. Well, we got an answer through the first 4 weeks of the season. They can play without Cooper Kupp. You'd rather play with him for sure, but they were able to win a couple of games without Cooper Kupp. Puka Nacua really has kind of ascended into a role where you feel pretty good having him as your primary receiver. So that's good news. Let's be honest, and I'm hoping that it changes over the course of the second half of the season. Aaron Donald's impact on this team has been very minimal this season. I know that he's drawing a ton of attention. I know that he's still getting doubled and sometimes tripled. And I'm not saying he's not a good player, but the fact of the matter is that even when he was getting doubled and tripled previously, he was still able to wreck game plans. He was still able to make a big play a couple of times a game to get you off the field, to get a takeaway or whatever it is. It really hasn't happened a whole lot this year, which means there's one guy left. It's him. It's number 9. It's Matthew Stafford. And if he isn't really good, never mind good, but really good, they're in big trouble, and we saw that they were able to run the ball a little bit last game with Henderson and with Royce Freeman, and hopefully they can continue to do that. But this team is going to go as Matthew Stafford goes. If he gives you a big day, you'll probably have a pretty good chance to win. If he gives you something between just an average or less than that day, there's almost no chance that you can win. Everything is on his right arm. I think Sean McVay knows that. I think he knows that. I think every person in that building probably knows that. If he's good, they got a chance. If he's not, they're pretty much dead in the water. Everything goes as number 9 goes. If they can keep him healthy, keep him upright, keep him good, they've always got a puncher's chance. But boy, oh boy, it's not the big 3, it's the big 1.
I love that. And look, that's unfair, especially at this stage of his career. We're talking about LeBron last night having to save the Lakers because no one else stepped up. Hey, when you're the superstar, when you're the quarterback, when you're the leader of the team, unfortunately, it doesn't matter how old you are, what current state you are from an injury standpoint, it's going to fall on you. The ball is in your hands, dude. But I do like the storyline. I'm here for the fact that he grew up a Cowboys fan. He went to games. He was big on the 90s Cowboys in his career against Dallas. He is 2-4, had that playoff loss against the Cowboys. You had that controversial PI call in 2014. And then last year, 22-10 loss to the Cowboys. He had 308 yards for his career, 7 TDs and 6 interceptions. So it's going to be a little bit of a homecoming there. You know he's going to want to play well and really take that momentum into the rest of the season. But yeah, I'm looking at the fact that they're without their star cornerback, Trayvon Diggs. He was put on IR early in 2023. CJ Goodwin, he's also been on the IR. So this is the perfect time to face this Cowboys secondary when they're still looking offensively to adjust without Kellen Moore, right? More of a West Coast style offense with McCarthy. So I think that signs point to a breakout game for Matthew Stafford. You know those interceptions are killing him because it's really infuriating when you watch the tape because you're seeing eye-popping elite throws. There's no doubt about it. More than anyone in the league, it's just those key turnovers at the worst possible times that really shot this team in the foot. But also, I'm looking for a big bounce back game from Cooper Kupp because Cooper Kupp, that was the lowest output in his career with Stafford and Kupp, 29 yards. The previous was 44. He had those 2 key drops on the first drive. I think we're going to get a better version of Cooper Kupp. He's going to want to atone for his game last Sunday.
I do too. Look, Cooper Kupp has been so good that we just kind of started to accept, an 8 or a 9 catch, 100-yard, 1 touchdown day as, that's just what he does. It's really hard to do. That is a big day in the NFL to catch 8, 9, 10 passes, to go over 100 yards and to get into the end zone. And he did it with such regularity. It was such a reliable performance, such a consistent performance that you started to take it for granted. That he had a bad day against the Steelers, quite frankly, is how this league works. You have some bad days along the way. He just hadn't had very many of them. So it was kind of shocking to all of a sudden see it happen the way that it did. Never mind the fact that, like you said, D-Mac, he dropped a couple of passes. He's a pretty sure-handed guy along the way. I expect him to be a lot better for sure. But even if he's much better, I'll say it again. It goes back to number 9. They're the bizarro 49ers, right? That the 49ers have weapons all over the place, a great offensive line, a defensive line that can get out of the quarterback, Fred Warren in the backfield or in linebacker, a Hufanga and more in the secondary, that everything but the quarterback is like, look, just keep the thing running and let the quarterback do his thing. The Rams are the reverse image of that. It's like the quarterback needs to do all of it because nothing else is really at that high level. It's a lot to ask, but like you said, Dallas is not, a juggernaut. They are a vulnerable team. They're certainly beatable. We saw Arizona get them earlier in the year, and what's waiting. I know I keep looking ahead a little bit, but what's waiting for them the following week in Green Bay is also an opportunity.
For sure. And look, the reality is that, look, it's great to see Puka and Nakua and Stafford have success. We're happy about that. But this team is at its best when you got Kupp and you have Stafford being at their best together. He's the root beer to his flow. We understand that. Look, it's like he's Alan Slee, he's your main piece. I'm just your side piece. I'll be your Puka Nakua, but he's your Cooper Kupp, right? That's when you're at your best, right? You got the dream team right there.
Yeah, look, I think that you could be Cooper Kupp too. We're gonna have 2 Cooper Kupps. We're gonna do it for sure. And by the way, don't sleep on a Coke float. A root beer float, I know, is the classic and it's very good. I'm not throwing shade at a Coke float, but a root beer float. But sometimes do a little orange soda, like a little orange Fanta with vanilla ice cream. That's not a bad way to go either.
I'll crush a Coke float in the next episode during the show, man. Let's get it. But coming up here, our next set, we got key matchups that will ultimately decide this game. Rams Cowboys coming up Sunday here on this Football Friday on Locked On Rams.
Snap into NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, right this minute, right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. So think about that. You place a $5 bet and you get $200 more in bonus bets. That's right. $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action than right now. The FanDuel app, it is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, which includes, your traditional point spreads. There, of course, are player props. There are over-unders, and there's a lot more. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season, right? Go and find your Rams games. Go and find the teams that you want to see maybe drop a game, maybe miss a game, maybe have a player have a bad day. You got a player prop that maybe you can decide to go a little bit lower on, right? All of these things available to you at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
And we're off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we want to send a special shout out to our every listeners out there watching every episode, listening every episode. Thanks to you guys. I'm not going to flex. I'm not going to try to show off here, Travis, but a little billboard around town for Locked On Rams. Like I said, not trying to shove it in anyone's face or anything, but there's the billboard right there. So be able to check that out. Honk at it. You could yell at it. You can say whose house, Rams house, whose house, Locked On Rams house. You can do that when we're over there.
Look, I love the Locked On Rams billboard that's around town. It's awesome, and I love everything about it. But maybe we do kind of like a little Manny, Mo, and Jack thing, and we just put our faces up there alongside as well. We could snap, crackle, and pop, or however we want to do it. Just a couple of floating D-Mac and Travis heads. I like it.
I'm going to try to climb up to that bad boy, Ben. Have my wife take a picture from down there, try to wave. So it's going to be some good times. But
incredibly cool.
It's going to be good times. But here, Travis, here in the second segment, got to talk Micah Parsons. Continue to dive into this matchup. These are the key matchups that will ultimately decide the game because Micah Parsons, we know what it's like to have a game wrecker. Last week, TJ Watt, they actually did a pretty nice job. They were solid against TJ Watt. He wasn't as disruptive as we feared. And with Parsons, he's going to be lined up all over the defensive front. You just never know where he's going to be lined up on any given snap. But most of the time, he's going to be as the right outside linebacker. They're going to go after that matchup. You're going to have to chip with tight ends and running back. So it's going to be a big day for Alaric Jackson, who's kind of taken some steps in the wrong direction in recent weeks.
Yeah, he has. And this is probably the reality of, look, I know that the draft is kind of a crapshoot, and I know that sometimes you'll have a high pick that doesn't work out, and sometimes you'll find somebody in the lower rounds who really does. But you kind of are where you come in at, right? And Alaric Jackson was a guy that was not highly regarded, and he overperformed, I think, expectations. And now it's kind of settling back to where you thought. But I want to go back to what you started with. If they don't deal with Micah Parsons, that's it, right? I mean, that's it. There is no, we can. No. They need to do a good job on him. And I also like what you said too about TJ Watt. TJ Watt did have an interception. TJ Watt was, like we talked about last week, the everydayers will remember. TJ Watt makes $30 million for a reason, right? It's not because they like the cut of his jib. It's because he's awesome. Micah Parsons is awesome too, right? So he's going to make a few plays, but it needs to be a few plays. It can't be 8 plays. It can't be, 10 plays where he's constantly giving Matthew Stafford trouble. He's constantly blowing things up in the backfield. Let him have a slightly less than good day. And that's a chance for you to win the game. Because if we're saying, number 11's all over the field over and over and over again, then the Rams have no chance. They need to deal with him first, second, third, fourth, and then figure it out from there.
Yeah, and a lot of the reason why they did do a solid job against TJ Watt was because of Kevin Dotson, Rob Havenstein.
Yep.
Havenstein, if he's a little banged up, they're going to even want to exploit the matchup with Jackson, who you can also see Fowler against him using that speed rush. You still have Lawrence that's a problem. So that really is the big key of the game. Will this defensive line get consistent pressure? Will they attack Stafford? Because Stafford hasn't done well against pressure this season. That really is the recipe for disaster. But yeah, Parsons, a 91 PFF grade, 5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. That's really the key to the game. And look, a lot of people say the key to Micah Parsons is you try to run the football right at him. So whoever is in the backfield, are they going to be consistent with the run? Dallas allowed 4.2 yards per carry. That's 20th in the league, 670 rushing yards on the season. That's 13th in the league. So that's the next biggest key. It's pretty much the same thing every week. Broken record. Can Stafford stay upright? Also, will you commit to the run despite who's back there? You don't have your starting guys. But like you said last week, it doesn't bode well for running backs trying to get contracts, right?
They were great. They were really, really good. The Kyren Williams kind of said, all right, look, you got a guy that can do some work on the ground. He went 158 yards against the Cardinals. Like, oh, great. We found a guy. And then he's down, right? And he's on the IR, and he's going to be down for a while. They go and they get Darrell Henderson out of his living room. They promote Royce Freeman from the practice squad. And guess what? It worked, right? They had 120 some odd yards on the ground last week, and they were very effective running the ball, which again, not to relive, painful memories. I don't know why we start throwing the ball right out of the start of the second half, but that's it's a topic we've already covered. Let's run the ball. Let's keep the Dallas offense off the field. I agree with you. I think the way that you deal with an Aaron Donald, the way you deal with a Micah Parsons, a TJ Watt, a Myles Garrett, who we're going to see here in a few weeks coming to town with the Browns, you got to go right at him. You got to make them play the run as well, and they just can't just have a one-way go up the field. They need to do that. Whether they can do that, I think we'll find out pretty quickly, because if they don't, we know what the answer, we know what Sean McVay's instinct is, which is rely on the right arm of Matthew Stafford to throw it 40, 45, 50 times. And I just don't see a winning formula there.
Yeah, and as goes with the secondary, they're also missing Leighton Vander Esch. He was placed on the IR last week. So you're talking about second level, third level defenders. You're going to have to step up. So can you take advantage of that? By the way, Leighton Vander Esch. I don't know where that ranks as far as my all-time NFL names list. I would say worst NFL name of all time had to be Guy Whimper. Right? Guy Whimper, man. Come on. That's not a tough name for an NFL player.
No, Leighton Vander Esch plus has that thing that looks like a giant cardboard piece.
Dude,
Thing behind his
bring
head.
the horse collar back, right?
Yeah, the
Andy
old Bill
Katzmore.
Romanowski thing. Yeah, he's got a lot of gear on right there. I don't even think Eric Dickerson wore one of those things, and Eric Dickerson had all the gear, and he didn't have that giant, dinner menu behind his head.
That's the Cheesecake Factory menu right there. But yeah, so next one, though, this is going to be key. Rams secondary versus the Cowboys receivers. And this is big because CeeDee Lamb, he mainly is lining up in the slot. So you're going to see Kobe Durant matched up against him. And Durant, he's allowed 19 catches on 29 targets this year. That's a 51 PFF grade. He was someone that we felt was going to have a breakout year. He led the NFL in interception, turnover, return yardage last year. We haven't seen a turnover from Kobe Durant. So I'm looking for an interception, maybe off a tip ball, maybe grab a fumble, something like that to really get his season on track because he's allowing at least 43 yards in coverage, 4 separate games. That's a match they're going to look at. You're going to see some zone, of course, for the Rams, so he's not going to be all by himself. But when he's on the outside, I see Akello and Kendrick. But Kobe Durant is definitely going to be someone that needs to come through and step up this week for this team to slow down this Dallas offense.
Look, the Cowboys are on national TV, or I shouldn't say national TV. They're all national TV. They are on standalone TV so often that even if you're not a Cowboy fan, it feels like you kind of know the Cowboys reasonably well with all the Monday night, Sunday night, and 125 games that they get. You get to see them by themselves a lot. What's the secret to beating them, I think, is make Dak Prescott make a bunch of plays. Occasionally he will, but frequently he won't. So if they make Dak Prescott have to make a bunch of throws, he's going to give you a couple. And that's where you're talking about all the Rams secondary guys having some opportunities. This is not Tom Brady, where if you ask him to go back there and throw a bunch of plays, he's going to just pick you apart. This is not a guy that's just relentlessly accurate. This is a guy that makes some questionable decisions. This is somebody that is not the most accurate passer that you're going to find in the league. This is somebody that if you just did a blind taste test, so to speak, he's Kirk Cousins. The numbers are virtually indistinguishable from one another. If you look at the two of them side by side, we know that Kirk Cousins will give you a few. Make Dak Prescott give you a few. And I think what you were talking about, D-Mac, with the Rams secondary, there are a lot of opportunities there that they're going to have to take the ball away a few times. They're going to, and I'm not talking necessarily just on Sunday morning, but they're going to have to be a little bit more stout in playmaking, not just necessarily giving up a bunch of points because they've done a decent job there, but giving the offense an additional opportunity or two through the course of the game, because that seems to be the spot that bogged down a little bit.
Yeah, it's a great point about Dak Prescott. As this team goes as he goes, as far as is he having success? Is he making mistakes? You look at this Cowboys offense, 25.7 points per game. That's 5th, but can tell you from hearing this from Cowboys fans in the comments for the crossover episode is that they're not happy with Dak Prescott in the red zone. They're not happy with Mike McCarthy in the red zone. So far this season, Dak, 6 TDs, 4 interceptions, 91 rating. This Rams secondary, too, one thing I want to point out is they've had success this season without relying on pressure, right? They've been able to limit guys, but I will say I have a tough time using the entire season stats to look at the performance of the cornerbacks last couple of weeks because you saw last week Pickens and Johnson, they combined for 186 yards. They really had their way with Witherspoon and Kendrick. So we're going to see if they can bounce back. On the year, they're holding receivers to a 58.1% completion rate. That's 4th. Quarterbacks with a sub-80 rating. But will it get back to where they were, or will they continue on the slide that we saw that started last week?
Well, I think that, to go back to your original point, this is where Aaron Donald can make a huge difference. This is where the Sunday morning would be a really good time for Aaron Donald to say, oh, you guys don't think I got it anymore? Watch this. To have him go out there and just absolutely terrorize Dak Prescott. Aaron Donald's got a knack for big moments, right? We've seen it in the Super Bowl. We've seen it in the NFC Championship games that, when you need a play, 99 can frequently deliver one. Well, this is the Cowboys. Everybody watches the Cowboys. Everybody's paying attention to the Cowboys. So hopefully he can do what you're talking about, because that allows you to make plays in the back end. If the quarterback is under pressure, if he can make some plays, if he can be the game record that we've seen him be for the better part of a decade, then everything else gets a little easier. We've seen Byron Young start to get a little bit better week to week to week. He's starting to carry his responsibilities pretty well as well. But I think it comes back to number 99. Your best players on a team that's not quite talented from top to bottom, the guys at the very top need to play like they're at the very top, and now would be a good time for Aaron Donald to do that.
Absolutely. He'll be going up against Tyler Smith. Tyler Smith's done a really good job this season. We know that Donald's always going to impact the game just on getting double teamed alone, but can he have a factor and really get the quarterback and disrupt? That's going to be a big key. But coming up in our next segment, throw out some predictions and talk a little bit about the trade deadline. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
Football is fun. Football is great. You watch it on the weekends and you're having a good time. What if it could be more fun? This is where PrizePicks takes over, right? PrizePicks is the most fun you're going to have watching football. You can win up to 25 times your money this football season. You just select 2 or more players. You pick more or less on their projected stats, and you place your entry. That's it. That's the whole thing. PrizePicks is incredibly simple to play. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. There are quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types that are what make PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app, right? So you're thinking, let's use Darrell Henderson. Is he going to have more or less than his PrizePicks projection? Cooper Kupp, more or less than his PrizePick projection. Micah Parsons, more or less than his PrizePicks projections. And with PrizePicks, it is so easy. In a couple taps, you're talking 25 times your money if you nail it, right? $10 into $250 with just a couple of taps. Here's how you do it. You go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl. That's LOCKEDON NFL. prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl. Use the code lockedonnfl for a first deposit match of up to $100. prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl for a first deposit match of up to $100. And when you're done with that, you're going to be hungry, right? The game's going on. You're like, oh man, I forgot to load up on my stuff. This is where DoorDash comes in. See, here's what I like to do. I like to go a little local in my DoorDash. And there's a place in my neighborhood that I'm a pretty regular at, and DoorDash is kind of the way that I get it more often than not. A place called Bistro K, right? It's a little restaurant right by my house, mostly Italian, but they got a couple of different things. I'm a big chicken piccata guy. They got all sorts of apps that you can bring in, and DoorDash gets it done right to your door. All your favorite restaurants and stores, retail to grocery, are on the app, so you can shop everything you need to get game day ready. And right now, you can get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. And when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKED23, you are ready to go. Subject to change, terms apply. Again, 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKED23, LOCKED23. Go put that DoorDash app on your phone, start eating.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, Travis, prediction time. And for this game, look, this is a tough matchup. You got to neutralize the defensive line. That secondary is something the Rams can exploit. The Rams lead the league in explosive plays. I think they're going to be playing like a desperate team, a team that realizes that if this season's going to go south, it could start this Sunday. I think you're going to get a big bounce-back game from Cooper Kupp. If you can guarantee me 0 turnovers, 100-plus yards rushing, I think I got to go with the Cowboys. Okay, you got to win one for Jordan John McVay. Okay, Jordan John McVay, got to win one for him. So I'll take the boys. Wouldn't be shocked if they lost, right? My heart tells me they win. My brain tells me they probably lose. But still, this is not a great Cowboys team. They're dealing with injuries, and this is a Rams team that can score points, just limit those turnovers, and try to win in Big D.
They kind of have to, D-Mac. I know that we'll probably talk about this next week quite a bit, and it's certainly depending on what happens on Sunday is going to have a lot of to do with the tone of whatever it is that we ultimately get into heading into that Packers game. They kind of have to win this game because, not to look too far ahead, 4-5 going into the break is barely alive. Right? It's barely alive. And I know that the NFC's bunched together, but you look at what the Rams have, you look at who they're playing, and it's going to be an uphill slog. You got to win these next 2 games. 5-4 feels like there's a path to get to 9. So you go 4-4 over the course of the last part of the season. You can't get to 5-4 if you don't win on Sunday against the Cowboys. I think that the Packers are very vulnerable. I know the Rams have struggled there, but I think that is the more likely win of the 2 coming up, which means that this is the one that you got to throw. Whatever's in McVay's bag, I think, has to come out on Sunday against the Cowboys. I really think they have to win this game, so I think they do. The Cowboys traditionally have been a decent matchup for the Rams. We've seen it since Sean McVay came in here that they've played the Cowboys pretty well along the way. So I'm optimistic. Now, I think the Rams don't blow anybody out. The Rams are going to play tough games all season long. So I think it can come down to a Lucas Haversick field goal attempt. I think it can come down to a defensive stand if the Rams are on the other side of the ball. I think it's a close game, and I think the Rams probably pull it out 24-23, something like that. But they have to win this game because if they don't, they're in hot, hot water.
100%. And if you lose this game, then you're talking about Jeff Fisher territory, right? We're in the worst possible territory. You hate being there. And if the season were to end today, the Rams would be on the outside looking in of that playoff picture. But look, this is a team that missed the playoffs for so many years, right? That any type of playoff appearance is something that you should appreciate. Sure. And it really starts this weekend. Really, real quick on the trade deadline, and we'll talk about that all on Monday. But this really could be a 1-minute topic at the end of the day, maybe a 10-second topic, because I feel that they're not going to do anything. They're always looking at 2024, 2025. Keep those resources, keep those picks. It's not the F them picks era right now. It's, hey, you got any more of them picks? Can you get some of this dead money off? Because you got over $70 million in dead money. So unless something it was presented to them that they can't turn down, they're going to stand pat. Unless it's something that's virtually free, I don't think they're going to do anything. Right. And by free, I mean, like you're talking 5th, 6th, 7th round pick, and it's like a why the heck not kind of sort of situation, then maybe they'll do something. But I know that Rams fans have gotten spoiled with some big moves towards the deadline, that the Rams are actually one of the few teams in the NFL that does trade a little bit. I don't think it's going to happen. Watch what they do. Don't listen to what they say. And what they've done is they've been incredibly conservative in building this roster. And I expect them to continue to be. Yeah, they're sitting at home, right? And don't feel bad about it. I mean, look at the Dodgers. Right. They did nothing last year. Hopefully they get Ohtani this year. Sometimes you have to save up for you want, no matter how much resources you have, no matter how rich your franchise is. So we'll talk about this more on Monday, but that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAX_LA. And as always, you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house is Locked On Rams house?